So I have here my pieces for our puff sleeve and for our new top. So this is my sleeve pattern. I have a fold here, and so I have already cutted 2 sleeves. I know they are huge, but this is what we want. We will do a puff sleeve on the top, and we will do a gather here on the lower part, and that's why the sleeve is so big. Then we have for the front we have on lining, and we also have the same pattern pieces cutted with our main fabric, with our side darts, as we almost do almost every time. And now for the back, we have the lining and we have the main pieces also, and we have so many ways we can close this on the center front and on the center back that I still haven't decided what I'm gonna do today. So I still didn't cut any straps or using clasps. I don't know yet. So for now, I'm not going to cut any additional pieces for the front to finish the front, neither the back. I'm gonna think about it. So the first thing we need to do, and I already did that to my lining, is to sew the darts. And sewing the darts, it's something I've shown you a million times, but I'm gonna show you again if this is your first video. So fold right sides facing together of your dart like so, pin, and sew with a straight stitch. You start sewing on the outside here, and then you move. This is a slightly curved line, so you move, you go straight here until you reach the fold of the fabric, and then you continue 3 or 4 more stitches. You leave the tail, so you don't go back. You leave the tail of your thread, because we then come to the table and tie 2 knots, and that's how we finish the darts. And you will see that it's much more nicer on the outsides, on the reverse, on the main side. When you are using it, it doesn't stick at your bust like a bust point sticking out of fabric. If you do this properly, you will see that this works if you sew this like I'm suggesting. So this is the first thing I'm going to do, but I also can sew my lining sides. Since I've already sewed my darts on my lining, I can already go ahead and place my front with my back like so, and I am going to pin on the shoulder area, and I can sew on the shoulder area already. Something that I also want to tell you is that we have notches marked on the pattern pieces, back, front, and also on the sleeves, and you should mark these notches on your pattern pieces, on your fabric. As you can see here, I have a slight cut here, and I have another one here, and I have another one on this side. And on the front and on the back, I also marked the notches on my pieces, and this is important so that when we match all of them, they are matched properly. So go ahead and go to your sewing machine, prepare the darts. I'm gonna show you on my, I'm gonna film it and show you, so if it's your first time, it's easier for you. And then we will sew the shoulder area here, and then we'll be back on the table. Since we are going to the sewing machine, there's something else I am going to do already, which is gather from one notch to the other. So I'm gonna move my tension to the maximum on my straight stitch, and I'm gonna put 9, that it's the maximum, and I'm gonna make the bigger stitch I can. It's 5 on my machine, and then you will see that the machine helps me do the gather, and I will do gather from here to this point. Okay, so all this here is going to be already gathered on my sewing machine, and I'm gonna do this for both sleeves. I'm not going to line the sleeves. You may decide to do it, but I don't want to do it. I think it's too thick, and I don't want to do it. This fabric is a little bit stiffer than my other plain fabrics. This is from 𝗔𝗹cie, and it's printed on demand. So there's some companies that print on demand. So I thought a little bit thicker fabric and stiffer in texture, and it has less elasticity than my normal fabrics. So I decided to use it today because I think it's gonna work very well for my sleeve. To finish the darts, we just tie 2 knots here on the end. We trim the excess threads, and I also open this a little bit and trim here, like so. Okay, and this is our darts ready. So I've placed my front with my back right sides facing together, just like we did for the lining. I pinned on the shoulder, and now I'm gonna sew on the shoulder area for both of them. Now that we have our front and back pieces sewn together and our sleeves, and I showed you on the machine how to do this effect, but if you are not able to do it, don't worry, just go ahead, do a basting stitch, leave the tail, and now we will pull to adjust the amount of gather that we want. So I already have this because I used my machine, my tension, as I showed you, but you can easily replicate this even if you don't have even if you can't adjust your machine. Now we have only did the gathers between the notches because we don't want gather on this part here, and this is optional. This is the style that I've done, but it's optional. If you want to do more gathers, you can. So now I'm going to show you on one side, and then you can replicate on the other. So I have here my front and I have here my back, and this is where I'm going to apply my sleeve. So the sleeves are symmetric, so you don't worry about the front and the back of this sleeve. You just need to look for the notch, the center notch that we have marked on our fabric. So I'm going to search for it, it's here. I'm going to put a pin because I can see better with the pin. And now what we are going to do is place right sides facing together of our sleeve against our pattern, like so. And we are going to align the center notch, these notches that we have on the sides with the notches that we have marked on the pattern, and the edge with the edge here. And the trick for me here, since we have opposite curves, is for me to use a lot of pins and do this very carefully and very calmly. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna do this very calmly, and I'm gonna pull the threads and do the rush and focus on the effect that I want, and you can adjust this according to your tastes. The only thing you need to be in consideration is that you need to align the notch with the notch, and the end with the end, and the center notch with the center notch. And then you just need to adjust the gather here so that you have more or less even gather. You could also, instead of gather, you could have done like pleats, manual or whatever effect you want here, but this time in this version I did it like so. Probably in the future I will try some other options on this one, and I will share with you if I do this with pleats or any other effects for the puffiness of the sleeve. So I have here one of the sleeves ready. I'm gonna do the same for the other without showing you because you don't need to see this twice. The only thing we need to do now, when we have both sleeves attached to the main piece, is going to your straight stitch machine and with a zigzag stitch very near the edge of the seam, sew the sleeve to the pattern, making sure that we keep the effect that we created there, and we do a zigzag from one edge to the other, securing this seam, and we do this for both our sides. So now before I do anything else, I'm just going to trim the threads that I have here because, as some of you may know, I hate having them on my way when I'm sewing, so I'm just going to trim without cutting fabric. I'm just going to trim them, and then I will let you know what to do next. We now have here our two sides with the sleeve and the front and the back here. And so I'm going to explain you again on one side and then you do for the other one. We are going to place right sides facing together because we are going to pin under the arm, aligning the seam and on the side seam also. So this is very simple. You just go to your sewing machine, and I'm gonna do this with my overlock. I'm going to serge all the sides together, closing the lower parts of my sleeve and also the sides of my pattern. And I will do this for both sides, and we'll be again here to explain you what to do next. If you want to know one detail that I do, I flatten the darts when I sew it. I always try to flatten it, and so sometimes I put a pin here so I won't forget. I like to flatten the dart like so, but that's something I do. Of course, this is like a detail. You may choose not to do so, but I prefer. We have so many ways to finish the sleeves on the edge here, and we have so many ways we can finish this top. I'm still navigating on my own mind with so many ideas, but I have to decide for one. So for now, let's just sew this and be back here. So I've made some decisions. So grab your lining, match the side together, pin and sew, and do this for both lining pieces. We will later on connect the lining with our main piece, and I will show you how and the detail finish that you want, how it will look, because I think it looks pretty good. So pin the sides for both of them, and then I decided to do something for the sleeve, just like on the image we shared on our Facebook group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pattern piece, and on the lower part here of my sleeve it will be like a ruffle, like a ruffle, and I will do a channel for a gather here, more or less, so I have to decide where. So I'm not gonna mind that this has extra seam allowance, despite I'm not going to use it on this version that I'm gonna create now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a channel that I'm gonna sew to my sleeve here. And the best way to do that is probably to try to measure. I'm gonna put 2 centimeters from my original pattern, so not from my seam allowance, from my pattern, and I'm going to create a channel here. So parallel to this one, 2 centimeters between here and here, 2 centimeters. And now I'm going to create a channel with 1 centimeter for the elastic. It will be enough. So again, if I draw more or less here, 1 centimeter, this will be my channel. So now what I need to do is to cut a strap of fabric. I'm going to cut in white. A strap of fabric. Of course, this is the fold line, so this must be done for both of the sleeves, and we're using the fold line. And I'm going to be using this small example here. I'm going to give a small seam allowance for each side. So I'm going to cut a strap, and then I'm going to make sure that the size of the strap is exactly using this pattern. So with the fold here and with this edge here, because I want to match it with my sleeve on the same spot. So I want this to be a perfect measurement. So I'm going to go and cut the piece of fabric. So I'm going to share what I just cut it. And as you can see, you can cut this straight because the fabric can be slightly curved if you then need to. And then I fold it. Okay, so it's a bit big. I need to trim here. Okay, and so I will need, of course, to do the same here. Oh, sorry. Like so. So this is much easier to do when you have the lower part here still open, because you will sew this flat. So it's much easier. So if you feel more comfortable, just remove the seam that we have just cut it. I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna remove it because I know that it will make my job easier. So I'm gonna remove the seam on my sleeve. This is not a huge amount of work to take this out. Of course, this is because we decided to do this finish. If we do a finish like we have on the swimsuit pattern life, where we create a band on the edge of the sleeve, of course we would use the seam allowance on the pattern and we wouldn't have to do what I'm doing now. But as I told you, I was going to decide the finish of my sleeve later, so now I have to do this, but it's okay. So something that this is very easy to take once you cut it. With our sleeve open, it's much easier to do what I want to do, so I'm gonna advise you on this when I edit the tutorial so that you don't have to take this as I just did. Well, something we need to create to place the channel here. Remember, I made this to 2 centimeters from the edge, but you don't really need to worry about it, because as soon as you place your strap, you will see exactly the spot where you are supposed to place it. But probably if you want to be very accurate, which I think I won't, I'm gonna do a line to make sure I align this properly. Let me just put some weights here. Well, I'm gonna start on one side, 2 centimeter 0.8 from the edge, because I know that was my starting point on my pattern. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna place the first pin, and let me see here, 2.8. So I measured 2.8 from the edge because it's 2 that we marked on the pattern plus 0.8 from the seam allowance, remember. So I'm gonna just mark here, and I'm gonna place the 2 edges of my strap. This white fabric is very stretchy, so probably I should have cut it a little bit smaller and then I would stretch it, but I didn't, and so I'm gonna leave it. Now I'm gonna here more or less in the middle, and I say tape 2.8. Let me just put a small dot here. Okay, and then a small one again, like here, and another one here. And now I'm gonna just align the strap pin in place. I'm gonna do the same on the other side, and I'm going to sew it. Don't forget that these stitches that you are going to do now are going to be visible on the outsides. Despite you will create a rush, so you will not see them a lot, but you will see them. So make sure you choose a thread according to the color that you want to see, okay? And what are we going to do? We are going to sew 2 parallel lines, just creating a channel for our elastic on the edge of one side and then on the edge of the other one, so that we can then go ahead with an elastic on the middle of our channel that we have created. So this is very simple, and just repeat the process to the other side. And on your straight stitch machine, please sew the channel. Another option, if you don't want to remove the seam here, as we did on the other side, would be to mark this here and pin, and then on the sewing machine. I don't think it's the best way, the easiest way, but it's a way if you prefer to do it like so. Of course we can do it like so, but I think it's easier to do like we did on that side, but you decide. So I'm just showing you another option if you decide not to be a little bit lazy and you don't want to take the seam that you have just sewn. But if you watch this video before you start doing it, then you didn't do the same that I did. So it's up to you if you watch the videos or not until the end. Most of you don't, so. So as you saw, I sewed one round, like I didn't remove the seam, and the other one I had removed the seam, so it was for me easier to sew it, but nevertheless it was not hard. So both of them, we have a strap and we created a channel for our elastic. I'm gonna use braided elastic today. I will place a link down below on the description with braided elastic that is perfect for swimwear, because it's chlorine resistant and salt water and etc. that I found it online, and you can buy in Canada, USA, and on Etsy if you want. And then you can also use the rubber elastic, but to create this channel, it's easier for me if I use braided elastic, so it won't break when I use my loop turner to go with the elastic. So now I'm trimming the excess very carefully, because I don't need fabric out from my seam. I don't need it. I just needed the fabric to create the channel. Of course you can decide not to trim it, but since I'm gonna use a thin elastic and it's 6mm or 5mm wide, I created a channel good for that size. And now I'm gonna trim the excess, because I think I don't need this excess fabric here. However, be careful, because this is something that if you use a big scissor, or if you are a bit distracted, it's very easy to cut your main fabric and you will ruin your bikini top. So be careful if you decide to trim like I'm trimming. Another thing I want to tell you is that since this is going to be a rushed area with like ruffles, you actually will not see the channel that I'm cutting, but as my fabric is a bit transparent, and you can see that it is transparent, actually the white is revealing on the other side, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm cutting this. But probably if the fabric was not white with the black dots, I wouldn't trim it and I would leave it as it is. So it's again up to you. If you do it, just be careful not to cut your fabric. Now I'm going to use my loop turner, and on the seam I have a hole, so I'm going to use the hole to go with the elastic. And now you are wondering what's the size of the elastic. Well, it will depend on the arm of the person wearing the bikini top, because you can have a thin arm or bicep or a little bit bigger, so it will depend. But I will try to give you more or less the measurements on the pattern when you buy the pattern, so that you know more or less which size of elastic to go. But I'm gonna go with a very large one, and I'm gonna put on myself, measure, and then I'm gonna decide the size of the elastic. Better, I'm gonna do it before. I'm gonna measure my bicep, I'm gonna decide the size, I'm gonna cut the elastic with 2 centimeter seam allowance, because I'm gonna overlap it, and then I'll be back here with the cutted elastic. So I've just did it, I measured. As you can see, it's 29 centimeters. So I'm gonna cut 2 of them with the same size. I don't think I'm gonna do that now because I'm first going to secure the lining to the main piece. I think it's better than do this immediately. So I don't know if you have sewn the sides like we talked before, so I'm gonna sew the sides and come back. I've just reversed this inside out, so it's easier for me to place the pins. I'm just replacing my clips with pins. You can also see this process on the swimsuit pattern live tutorial, because also the sleeves of the swimsuit are not lined and the rest of the pattern is. The front and the back, so you can also see this process there if you want. And I'm not going to my serger, I'm going to do this on my zigzag first, and I'm gonna decide if I'm going to my serger or not, because I'm much more accurate on my straight stitch machine than on my serger. So if I use an elastic stitch, it will be fine. So probably I will go with a zigzag all around, and then I will go to my overlock and overlock this. Don't forget that we have done some stitches before, so we will have to hide them to make this very nice and neat. Okay, everything is pinned in place, so I'm now ready to go to my sewing machine and secure these layers of fabric. So let's go ahead and see how this turns. So here it is. As you saw, we did a zigzag and then we went to the overlock or serger, as you call it, I don't know. And now it's the good part, because we just reverse all this inside out. And on the inside you have your seam hidden, so it's pretty nice, this finish, at least I think it is. Well, now I'm gonna have a break to think about what I'm gonna do here, but we can also already go ahead and finish the sleeve. So we have on this side, I've closed the hole and it's a bit crooked, as you can see, but on this side the hole is open, so much easier to show you on this one. Of course, we have to open a hole and then we will close it, but for now I'm gonna insert my loop turner here. No, no. Clip, clip, and your safety pin, and with your safety pin go through the hole and go with the elastic from one side until you come out. So I overlapped my elastic by 1 centimeter. I'm gonna secure them together, the two parts of the elastic, and then I'm gonna stretch until all my elastic is inside my channel. And I'm gonna do the same here, but here I have to open the channel. Oh, I'm sorry, this is so bad. On the other side it's much better. You see, this is the side that I sewed without taking my seam, and this is the side I sewed straight, so as you can see the result here was much better. So I'm going to open the hole. I'm going to go with the elastic just like we did on the other side. I'm going to sew the elastic overlapped by 1 centimeter from each side. It's the seam allowance I left, and then I will come back here. So my elastics are secure. I can just pull this. It's not going to be a lot of flare. Okay. And the same here. And then I just need to close the hole. Okay. Let me just reverse this to the right side so that you can see. Okay. Of course, we could do this probably a little bit more. I think this is too big. I want to pull this a little bit more. I'm gonna try it on because I like a little bit more flare than I've done. Let me check. Okay, I've just shortened my elastic by almost 4 centimeters, so it's a lot. But I really think it was big for me despite I measured on myself. That's why it's hard for me to give you a measurement for the elastic here. Okay, now it will be good. And now I'm gonna think the finishes and I'm gonna come back. So I have decided to use a clasp I have for the back, and my clasp is smaller than the size of the edge of my fabric, but I don't really mind. I'm gonna scrunch it a little bit and I'm gonna use this beautiful clasp, and this is the option I'm gonna do today for the back. We could add a strap and tie a knot on the back, but this is going to be my option today. And on the front, I've decided that I'm gonna sew the two parts together. So I'm gonna combine them here, and I'm gonna twist and tie a knot here in the middle, just like on the style on our group post. But I also think that a beautiful finish here would be to add two straps and tie a real knot here, so it would be a little bit more adjustable on the front. I think that would also be an amazing option. But today I'm just going to sew this together and see how it goes with the knots. No, I'm not going to tie a knot on the front. So for today's pattern, we will do a finish on the front, on the finish on the back. I think one beautiful finish here could be an extendable strap and you tie a knot, and so it's a little bit more adjustable on the front. And on the back, I'm gonna use these clasps today. Despite the clasp is smaller than the size of my fabric, I'm then going to just scrunch the fabric a little bit, and I'm gonna use this for my back. And for my front, I will do two straps, one for each side, and I will attach them here. But to start, this is not important. I was just trying it on to see how it's going. But for now, what do we need to do? We need to match our seams and pin our fabrics, and I'm gonna place the pins on my lining sides because I'm gonna apply the elastic on my lining sides, and then I'm gonna fold and do a top stitch, and so that's why I'm applying the elastic on the sides of my lining. And I'm gonna do this on the neckline, also on the bottom parts, on both sides. So serge with elastic, and we'll be back. So now I have pinned the neckline and the back with my lining on top of the table because I'm gonna apply elastic all around here. And this is it for now, because on the lower part here I'm gonna actually sew this as if it was a reversible. So I will match my seams like so together. So the best for us is to start with this lower seam and matching right sides facing together, just like I've done a couple of seconds ago. Pin the two fabrics together with your main fabric facing up on your table, because that's the side where we are going to apply the elastic. That's why it's up on my table. And I'm gonna start by applying the elastic here, reverse it to the other side, then I'm going to pin like it's pinned here. I'm gonna sew applying elastic. I'm gonna do this for both of them and we'll be back on the table. And it's much easier if we start with the lower seam instead of the neckline. So I'm gonna start, as I told you, on my lower seam with right sides facing together, and then I'm gonna sew the neckline. We now have our elastic applied, and we have our lower seam under the bust ready. We can reverse the entire pattern, the entire piece to the right side. Now you can attempt to do this seam again hidden like we did this one just now, but I'm not going to, because I feel that this is going to be too bulky for me to be able to do it properly, so I will not do it. But if you want to do this seam right sides facing together, you had to match them and sew them and then reverse it. But I think here in this part it is too much to tuck in inside, and I will not do a proper job, so that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to. So now that we have our front, our lower seam done, now yes, we are ready to pin the neckline and the back. As I told you before, pin all together, apply the elastic on the side of the lining, do a fold, do a top stitch with your zigzag or with your cover stitch. So you choose, and our top will be almost ready. Not ready, but almost. In fact, before I do that, I'm gonna do something risky, and if it doesn't work, you don't do it, you just do what we were going to. But I'm gonna do something a little bit different that I've tested before, but on bottoms, and I'm gonna do it here. That is to remove the seam allowance from all the edge of the lining, so I will not have excess lining when this is finished. And I'm gonna show you why. When this is on your body, and if you flatten the fabric here, you can already see here that you will have excess fabric, right? Because you can see the other fabric underneath. So I know that if I remove my seam allowance, this will not happen and I will not have excess lining. So very carefully, I'm going to cut 0.8 all around, but only on my lining. And I'm going to do the same here. And then I will do what I told you to do. Okay, let's risk it all and see how it goes. So as I told you, I've removed the extra seam allowance that we had here, and I'm going to pin on the neckline, on the front and also on the back, and I'm going to apply elastic on the side of my linings, and then I will fold the fabric and do a top stitch. I'll show you these small bits of it on my sewing machine. Just if you are not sure how to do it, you can check it, but then I will be back on the table to show you how we will finish the front and how we will finish the back. It's interesting because I see the statistics of the videos, of the tutorials, and I see that many of you are not going to watch the entire video. So sometimes I wonder if I am doing too long of a video. Should I shorten them? Should I make videos in 5 minutes and tell you blah blah blah, do this, do this, do this, so ba ba ba, boom, done. I don't know. Sometimes I question myself if I'm being too detailed because you don't watch the videos. I even have some surprises in some of the videos and no one sees the videos, so no one gets the surprises. It's a shame. And then also because there are some details and some answers to so many questions that you send me that are mentioned on the videos. So if I do the videos and you don't watch them, and then you ask me the same questions that I am explaining on the videos, sometimes it's hard for me, but well, go ahead. Let's do it like the magic fast video. So I have sewn the elastic as I told you, and now we just need to fold the fabric and do a top stitch. In my case, I'm gonna do a zigzag stitch all along the edge. So I've applied my elastic and I did my top stitch with a zigzag. Probably some of you would have used black thread, but I actually prefer using white here. It's a matter of choice, so I used white. And I now have my elastic and my top stitch on the front and also on the back. And now I'm gonna finish the back first. So I'm gonna place the clasp like I told you, and as you can see now that we have done all our seams, our end here is quite smaller than it was, of course, when we tried these ones, because we didn't have the seams ready. So now imagine that this was like so. Let's see. I can use this one, or I can go with a smaller one and rush this a little bit. So I will decide what I want to do. I'm gonna secure this for now here because I want to put it on, and I will only sew the clasp once I've checked on my body my size. So I will not sew this for now. I will only place the pin. But it's very simple to sew the clasp in place. I believe all of you know how to do it. Usually I use the lightning stitch because it's an elastic stitch and it's very resistant. And I go to my straight stitch machine and I do a stitch here. Sometimes I use the zipper foot to go closer to the metal, to be very close, but it's up to you, okay? So our back will be closed like so, okay? For our front, what I told you before is that I think it would be nice to have a strap here and we tie a knot, or we could have sewn them together and before we attach them now we would tie a knot and it would be a small knot here in the front. But today I'm gonna test something a little bit different and probably the lazy methods. So I decided to do something completely lazy today, but I think it's going to be pretty nice. I think in the future I will, if I want to do this with straps, I'm not sure if I like it, so I'm not going to tell you to do that. I'm going to give you another option right now. So I saw that the middle of the pattern, if you sew them together, right sides facing, and they would be together here, right at this moment. This would need for you to tie a knot because it would be too wide. The neckline would be too wide, so don't do that. If you want to do the connection between the two patterns without the center knot, you should cut on the pattern front here. You should remove 2 centimeters and then you can connect them. Otherwise the fronts will be too wide and the neckline will be too open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure. First of all, I'm going to fold this and I'm going to my straight stitch machine and I'm going to close this seam because I don't like this sticking like so. So I'm going to close it. Then I'm going to see here 3 centimeters. So it will be here. And I'm going to see where I have also 3 on this one. Here. And so, I need to make this here on the lower part. Yeah, I can see it. You can't, but I can. So it's okay. I overlap them. No, sorry. First I do this. Then I measure my 3 centimeters and then I place it here. Like so. And I'm going to sew them together, 1 stitch here and 1 here. So you have 2 stitches vertical here to secure the 2 sides. And then I'm gonna grab a strap of fabric or of whatever color you like, and then I'm gonna tie a knot here on the front, and that will be my finish, hiding the seams. I say this is a lazy method because of course if we remove from the front, if we remove a bit and we connect the 2 of them, it's a good finish and you can tie a knot if you want. But I think the knot is not volume, it doesn't have volume, enough volume, and I really don't know if I like it. But I for sure will think about other options, and I will have tutorials for you with other options on a very near future. I also would like to see your options. I'm sure you will be creative and find other options. So now I'm gonna place my 2 fronts right sides facing together and I'm going to align them. I think I should have connected them before and I should have cut it and connected them before, but I think there are so many options and sometimes I lose myself in the options, sorry. Okay, so they are together, aligned. Now I decide I want to take 3.5 centimeters, so it will be here. And I will be sewing over this line here. And they will be connected on that line there. So when we fold this to the other side, they will be connected here. I will then remove excess fabric and I will in the end tie a knot with a contrasting fabric. So let's go ahead and do this and also secure our clasps on the back. I have sewn the back clasps, so the clasp is ready and finished, and I think the finish looks pretty nice, and I trimmed the excess fabric. I really don't like a lot what I've done here. I should have connected them before and we had no seam visible and we can have but never mind. I did it like so. It is what it is. Now you have 2 options. you can lay this flat and hand stitch the edge here and the edge here so that this stays here flattened like so, and this will be a nice finish. Or you can just trim the excess and have the seam here. It's visible on the inside. I know it's not the nicest finish that I've done. I know that I usually do amazing finishes, and I know that this deserves a good finish. So I'm sorry about today's pattern not being perfect. My sewing is not perfect today, but nevertheless, I was wondering that I would like to go and finish this with a touch of color. So I would like to use this color and tie a knot on the front. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it before I decide what to do with this, if I'm gonna cut it or not. I can also cut it and then with a fold over elastic finish the seam so that you have like a black thing here, so you will not see any seam. It's a good finish and it's one of the options. But before I decide what to do, I'm just going to put it on, check with the bow on the front to see if I like it or not, and then I will show you the results. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will share the results on this on my body. And that's it for today, guys. See you soon. Bye. So I decided that I really don't like this in the middle. I like the color, but I don't like the result of the knot. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim this. So I have trimmed the excess, and I'm gonna grab a little bit of fold over elastic, but you can do this with a thin strap from your swimwear fabric. And I'm just going to go ahead, put it here, fold it, sew it with a straight stitch, and my seam will be hidden with the fold over elastic, so it will not be that bad, okay? And you will not see any seam, any additional seam on the outside, because this will be sewn only to the seam, folded only to the seam, so you will not see this on the outside, okay? So I have placed my fold over, so this is not that bad anymore. It's not perfect, as I know you are used when you see the tutorials. I always try to make this perfect, and today I don't think this is the perfect option, but at least we have experimented, we have seen how it goes, we have seen the option. It's not that bad, but it's not perfect, okay? So when you do it, if you want, remove the 3 centimeters on each side of the pattern, as I told you. Remove the 3 centimeters here vertically and connect the 2 sides before, so that you will not have this seam visible. And now this is it. Bye, guys. I will actually remove 2 centimeters from the center from my pattern, so when you get it, the pattern, you already have